Welcome back to another episode. Ryan and Kevin here with MMA Sucker and MMA Island. Today we have on for the first time MMA junkie reporter John Morgan. John, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Always busy, but that's a good thing, man. We got the sport up and running, so it's a nice thing.
Yeah. So now before we talk about fights and all that, I got to ask you, how was in Abu Dhabi for a second time?
Man, listen, it was 5 weeks was a long time. I'll say that, man. Being around, it was an honor to be there. It was great to be. Abu Dhabi is an awesome place, man. It's everything is so nice there. It's all brand new, and they're committed to making it like a tourist destination. So they do everything top notch. So it's a nice place to be. But 5 weeks is a long time to be away from home, man. My wife and kid. Just sleeping in my own bed. And, that was tough. So I'm assuming we'll be back there sometime early in 2021, but I'm hoping maybe this time it's that, like 3 weeks we did during the summer, maybe 4. I don't know. Five was a long time, if I'm being honest. I mean, I don't want to complain. I mean, there's a heck of a lot worse ways to make a living, but I miss my family. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Did you have to quarantine at all?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. The way their commitment to the bubble is extreme. So like you have to take a test to even get on the plane to go over there. And once you pass that test, then you go over there and then you've got to quarantine for 48 hours. So as soon as you land, you take another test. And then 24 hours later, you take another test. So you quarantine for 48 hours over there and you got to pass both those tests. And then after that, you're testing like twice a week during the rest of it. And they just constantly change out the color of your wristband and that sort of thing. So it's like, having seen the way that COVID has been dealt with, obviously I was in Florida. I live here in Vegas, so I'm at the Apex shows, and then obviously Abu Dhabi as well. But at Abu Dhabi, man, it's another level, man. Their commitment to keeping the bubble is amazing.
Yeah, definitely. 5 weeks is a long time, but let's just get to Abu Dhabi. Like, biggest fight out there, Khabib versus Gaethje. Khabib goes out there. We hear he had a broken foot after his fight. He still goes out there. He dominates Justin Gaethje. Then we find out he's retiring, unfortunately. But do you think Khabib is officially done?
It's crazy, man. Obviously, I saw his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, tweeted out 30-0 the other day. I mean, the hints are out there. Dana wants him to come back. I mean, Khabib is one of the biggest stars on the planet. I think a lot of people in the United States might not understand just kind of how big of a star he is. Yeah, here in the States, but, globally, especially in the Middle East, among the Muslim community. I mean, this dude is massive, right? So, a lot of money on the table for sure. And I think they'll try to tempt him with that to come back. I will say originally I thought no, here's a guy, man, the emotion that he had when he kind of broke down afterwards. I mean, to see him, bawling in the middle of the octagon. I mean, that pressure release, and to know, his dad was, anybody losing their father is big, but when he's also, your head coach, your mentor, your everything, man, it just changes the whole situation around. So initially, and from everything I've ever heard, he doesn't need any more money. As much money's on the table, he's got plenty as it is. So initially I thought no, but man, it just does seem like a lot of people are in his ear thinking, come on, man, let's get one more out of you. So we'll see what the UFC can come up with. I don't know what fight will make it exciting for him, but we'll see what they come up with.
Well, speaking of like a fight that could get to him 30-0, he's always wanted to fight GSP, Legacy and all that. We haven't heard anything serious about this though, but you got McGregor versus Dustin Poirier coming up in January, it looks like, and you have to assume the winner gets a title shot, but Khabib said in multiple interviews he doesn't really want to fight McGregor again. I don't know why, but do you think we ever see that rematch, or do you think Khabib comes back for a 30 fight against GSP, or maybe even Tony Ferguson? You never know.
Yeah, it's funny. I like the Tony Ferguson name. I mean, it's crazy as it is to say that. That was one I thought too. I mean, yes, he's coming off a loss, and yes, it's fallen apart 5 times before, so maybe we shouldn't tempt fate and try it again. But I know that even though Khabib and Tony kind of had a little back and forth at the press conference, I know that Khabib respects what Tony did to get to that position. The number of wins he had together and the work that he put in. The Conor thing, I don't know. Now I know the UFC would love to see the Conor fight come back together. I mean, that would be massive money. Of course, he'd have to get through Dustin Poirier first, but if he is, I know they'd love to put that fight together. But I don't think Khabib wants to put up with that. You know what I mean? I think he's truly a man of his word, and I just don't think he wants to deal with the hassle that comes along with a Conor McGregor fight. Now, maybe if Conor approaches it a little bit differently, and it's not the hatred and the all the darkness that was leading into their last fight, maybe. But I don't know. I think it's going to have to be something else. The GSP thing intrigues me, but I don't know how long you can keep teasing it out there. And I don't know that the UFC really loves the idea. It doesn't seem like the UFC is really into that fight. I think Dana's still a little bit mad at George for coming in and taking that middleweight belt and walking away with it. So I'm intrigued to see what options they come up with to try to make this 30th fight happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so another big name in sport is Israel Adesanya. We see Whitaker versus Cannonier fight at UFC 254, and Israel said if Cannonier wins, he's going to get the next title shot. But obviously, he didn't win. Whitaker won, and now Izzy is apparently moving up to 205. What are your thoughts about that? And him fighting Jan Blachowicz?
It's interesting. I mean, I think ultimately he sees it as a path to maybe get John Jones. You know, I mean, those two guys have been going at it. It's gotten pretty personal in there, and I think Adesanya is thinking maybe, you know, if I take John's old belt, I think I can, you know, force him to come back down to me and bug him just enough, because it does seem like Israel knows how to get in John Jones' head, man, and I think he
Yeah,
might be able to try to get him to come back down to 205. So listen,
yeah,
I'll be honest with you, I'm okay with it, and here's the reason I'm okay with it. I mean, Robert Whitaker clearly is the number one contender at 185 pounds. But he said straight up, listen, I don't want to fight until springtime. You know, I got other things going on with my family and Christmas and those sort of things, and that's what I really want to focus on. So you know, if they want to try to keep the division moving in the meantime and try to keep some things going, it's the same thing at 205. Now, Glover Teixeira, man, I mean, with the performance that he put on, Glover has a real case for being the number one contender in the division. I don't think many people would argue with them. But you got to think about the financial side of it too. I mean, this is about, you know, generating revenue, right? And I don't know that Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz is a big money fight. I mean, no disrespect to either
yeah.
guy, but I just don't know
Mhm.
that that's going to get people excited. But when you talk about Adesanya, you know, moving up and trying to go for that champ status, and you know, the undefeated record that he's got and his growing star power, I'm okay with it, man. I know a lot of people are frustrated with it, and a lot of people say that they, you know, prefer to see Glover there, and I definitely think Glover deserves to maybe be a backup, or to perhaps face the winner. I don't think he should have to do anything else in the meantime. But I mean, come on, let's be honest. If it was your
Yeah,
$60 that you had to part with, you know, and you had to put that pay-per-view money down, which fight would you honestly rather see? I think most people would say Adesanya.
Yeah.
yeah. So do you think Israel will just go up, say if he wins the belt, you think he's gonna stay at 205, or you think he's gonna jump right back down to middleweight?
You know, I don't know. I think that's interesting. I mean, I don't get the feeling that Adesanya is going to be around for a long time, just cleaning out the division and going up and down the roster. I think he wants to make these kind of Conor McGregor-esque moves, you know, where he's doing big things. And man, you know, you're trying to challenge yourself to bigger and better things. So him and his coach, Eugene Behrman, they've talked about, you know, potentially moving up to heavyweight as well. What you think about that? I mean, that would be absolutely incredible. Again, I think he would definitely stay at 205 if John Jones said, "Hey, I want my belt back," you know, and I'm gonna come get it. So we'll see. I mean, I don't feel like he's moving up to 205 because, you know, 185 is tough for him to make anymore. You know, we've seen that, for instance, you know, mentioning Conor McGregor. When Conor McGregor moved up to lightweight, behind the scenes, pretty much everybody said, "Look, I don't think he can make featherweight anymore. Like, it's just he's gotten bigger. He's gotten older." I don't get that sense with Adesanya. So I think Adesanya would have options on the table. I think it's just all going to be about where the biggest fights are at, and what's the biggest opportunity at the moment to build a legacy. Because I think that's what he wants to do, man. He's not just about, you know, winning fights. It's about, you know, winning the biggest fights available, and building a legacy to prove himself as one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever, by the time he's done.
Yeah, and so are you a fan of the whole double champ thing? Sometimes you see it doesn't work out, but in other cases you see Amanda Nunes jumping up back and forth in divisions, defending the belts. What are your thoughts on the whole double champ thing?
Yeah, with Amanda Nunes, it's kind of interesting, right? Because I mean, one of her divisions, 145, there's like nobody there. You know, I mean, no
Yeah,
disrespect, but the UFC just hasn't hired, you know, a roster full of people. You know, I think Bellator has more people on their women's featherweight roster than the UFC does. So that one especially, it's like, well, you're not really slowing anything down. I'm not, if I'm being honest, I'm not generally a fan of it, because I do feel like it does inevitably slow down a division, right? You got contenders lining up, and how do you decide which belt is right? And, you know, I don't know that it's necessarily great for the athlete either. You know, the champ. I think there's probably a reason that, you know, we haven't seen people hang on to champ status for lengthy periods of time. I don't think it's easy for you to move up and down divisions. But I will say this with Adesanya, man, he seems like a guy that could fight like 4 times a year, and you know, do 2 at 185 and 2 at 205. So, you know, as long as you're active and you're willing to defend both belts, I don't have a problem with it. But the biggest thing to me is, you know, if you're somebody that only wants to fight once every 6 months or so, which is, you know, listen, it's understandable at the highest level of the sport. I mean, you're facing an absolute killer every time you're out there, you know, and you got a huge target on your back. But if you're only wanting to fight every 6 months or so and you got 2 belts, I mean, that only allows one contender a year to get an opportunity to win the belt. So
yeah.
if you're not going to be active, no, I don't think you should be allowed to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's going to be an interesting thing. But speaking of the 205 division, last weekend, Glover Teixeira, what a year he's having, goes out there, submits Thiago Santos. A lot of people were doubting him, including myself. I'm not going to lie. And right now, he's clearly the number one contender. Where do you see the UFC going with this? You see them changing their mind and be like, Izzy, how about you fight Whitaker maybe in like May or something, and then defend your middleweight belt one more time? Or do you see them saying, no, we're just going to do that fight, Izzy versus Blachowicz? You think Glover will fight Blachowicz next, or no? You're not seeing it.
Depending on how things play out, things could change. But as of right now, no, I don't. And I hate to say that. And I feel terrible because, Glover definitely deserves it. But I just don't necessarily see that being the most attractive fight to the UFC right now. Now, if something happens to Adesanya, and like I said, I think honestly Glover should be the backup for that fight, for Adesanya and Jan Blachowicz. I know that's not necessarily the greatest solution, but at least it gets you there. And if something does happen, you're training, you're ready, you do get to collect a little bit of a paycheck. And then I think he should get the winner. The only thing that's a little bit concerning about that is that if you say he gets the winner, and let's say Adesanya does beat Blachowicz, and then John Jones does want to come down, then you got to do the John Jones fight, right? So now you got Glover Teixeira waiting again. So it sucks. It's a bad position to be in. And I would love nothing more to see. Glover definitely deserves it. So if they do give him the title shot, no arguments for me. He definitely deserves it. It's just a matter of what's really going to stir people's interest. And I don't mean any disrespect at all to Glover Teixeira, Jan Blachowicz, but I just don't see that one being a big needle mover. I think if Adesanya is involved in something, that moves the needle a little bit. And then especially, if doing that leads to Adesanya, John Jones, which I think could be a massive fight, then I think you've done the right thing. It maybe sucks for Glover Teixeira though, but I just think it's unfortunate timing right now.
Yeah, speaking of John Jones, say Izzy does win that belt, do you think that's something that will bring him back to the division? Because they're going back and forth on Twitter all the time, and the next heavyweight fight is Stipe versus Francis, so you probably wouldn't see Jones maybe till summer or something. But do you think we get Izzy versus Jones eventually? Because that's a fight everyone wants to see. I feel like.
I think so, man. I think exactly that. And I saw Mike Winklejohn came out. I don't remember where the interview was. I apologize, but I saw that he came out and said like, "Hey, we're not chasing anybody. They can come up to heavyweight." The thing is, I think Adesanya would come up to heavyweight, and we'll have to see the timing on all that. I think they'll fight. I do think they'll fight. Whether they'll fight at 205, whether they'll fight at heavyweight, it wouldn't make sense for them to fight at heavyweight unless John had already won a fight at heavyweight. Like it wouldn't make sense for John's debut at heavyweight to be against Israel Adesanya at heavyweight. That just doesn't make any sense. But depending how the timing of things work out, if John did get a chance to fight for the heavyweight title, if something happened with Francis Ngannou, or I doubt that they would turn that around to get the winner in. I can see the fight potentially taking place at heavyweight at some point.
Yeah.
But I just think Adesanya, I think he knows how to mess with John's head, man. I really do. And I think if he wins that 205 belt, man, he's so good at getting under John's skin. I think you'll be able to kind of talk him back into wanting to come down and shut up this young punk that's got his belt. So I think they will cross paths at some point. And I think it's a fight that would be incredibly intriguing because John to me is still the greatest of all time. Now, I understand the arguments against it, but you talk about the length of time that he's been dominant in a division. To me, he is the greatest of all time. But Adesanya is on, another level right now, and his speed, his striking, his angles. Would that give John problems? I would love to see it, man. I think that fight would be great, and the buildup would be off the charts. It would probably get a little bit nasty in there, but it would be off the charts.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So back to the lightweight division. Say Khabib is officially done. All right, he's not coming back. He's done. Now, assuming the winner of McGregor versus Poirier is next, what do you think? Who do you think would fight for the vacant belt? Like, do you think the winner of McGregor Poirier would fight Gaethje next for the vacant belt?
I
How do you
wouldn't
think
be
that works?
surprised. I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if by the time January 23rd rolls around, we've made that for a title. We'll see. We'll find out.
That's what I was
I
thinking.
think yeah, I think Dana White said rightfully so, like, hey, we're not in a rush to implement another title. We're not in a rush to kind of take the belt off of Habib, and I think that's smart, right? Like, give Habib time. It's obvious how emotional he was. It's obvious how trying that whole thing was for him, and if he decides he wants to come back, don't strip him in the meantime. The guy's earned it, right? He's done everything you've ever asked of him. But if say by, the first week of January or so, we've talked to Habib and he's just not ready to come back yet, and he doesn't know. I mean, that still gives us another 6 weeks from now or so to let Habib mull things over and make a decision. I think if he decides, no, I'm done, or at least I'm done for now, I would not be surprised if you have Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fighting for the vacant lightweight title, because, man, listen, Conor McGregor's a moneymaker no matter what, but if you can put a belt on him, even better, right? I mean, it just gets even more exciting. It's more marketable. So I would not be shocked. If not, then yeah, I think you definitely see the winner there. You could go with Gaethje, you could go with Tony Ferguson, you could go with Michael Chandler. There's a lot of options on the table. Thankfully, there's so many great names at lightweight. So my first thought is that they'll probably make that January 23rd fight for the belt. But if not, I think you'll definitely see the winner face off against. I think you'd have to put that winner. Like, I don't think you could do that fight on January 23rd and then do, say, like, Ferguson and Chandler for the title. I don't think that would make sense. So I think you'd have to pick one of those names and put it up against that winner if you don't award it on January 23rd.
Yeah.
So now, as we all know, the Ultimate Fighter is back. There's so many great fighters when it returns. I think Colby Masvidal, my decision, would make for the best season. But who do you think would be the best coaches? Maybe Izzy Jones, if the timeline works out. Who do you think would be the best two coaches on that new season?
It's funny. We wrote a piece on this at MMA Junkie, and we picked coaches. I went exactly the same way you did, man. Colby and Masvidal. Come on, man. That would be can't miss TV. And, it doesn't screw up any title timelines or anything like that. I mean, obviously the tough process takes a while, right? Especially if you got to have all the filming, and then you got to let it air out. And then, it kind of throws things off. So when there's a belt involved, I think it kind of really limits your timing and your flexibility. So yeah, I mean, look, if you could get Jones and Adesanya to sign up for it, that'd be incredible. I don't see them doing it. But if you could, it'd be amazing. I do think, Michael Chandler being involved in some way or another would be a good one. Like if it was like Chandler or Ferguson or something I just think that would be a great way to introduce UFC fans to Michael Chandler, because, there's a ton of UFC fans that don't watch anything but UFC, and they've never seen his body of work at Bellator. They don't know the type of guy he is. I mean, what a well-spoken and incredible representative of the company he'll be. So I think that would be a cool way to introduce people to Michael Chandler. But if it's me, yeah, man, give me Covington and Masvidal all day. Put those two dudes on there. You can't tell me that wouldn't be an exciting season, man. That would be phenomenal. And and it should work out in terms of basically determining a number one contender. So you still got to do Usman and Burns at some point. And so while Usman and Burns are getting that thing worked out, then essentially Masvidal and Covington, they get to battle for the rematch, right? Both of them want a second crack at Usman. So I think the timeline worked out real well on that. So that to be honest, is what I would really like to see.
Yeah, like you want to have people tuning in for the return of the Ultimate Fighter. Like, just imagine Colby Masvidal, ex-best friends. They hate each other right now. Just assuming that's the fight to make right now. That would be just an amazing season. We'll really look forward to that. But so whenever we have people on, we always ask them, what are your top three in the GOAT list? Obviously, you just told us John Jones is yours, but who would you rank below John Jones in your top three?
Yeah, I think John Jones, you got to have him in there. I think Demetrius Johnson, you got to have him in there as well, man. You think about what he did. I know that, it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, and there was criticism of the way he fought. But, man, you think about just what a complete mixed martial artist he was. I mean, the guy could do everything. And obviously still is, not getting a chance to compete quite as much at one championship. They were on hold for a while, but they're starting to get things going again. So I definitely have him in the conversation. And I'd probably put George St. Pierre in there as well, man. I think you'd have to have George in there. It's sad because, there was a time when Anderson Silva should have been there. And if you take that prime era Anderson Silva was among the greatest of all time. It's just, he's had so many losses to his resume at the end of his career. I think it's tough to still have him in that argument, which is a shame because, those fights at the end of your career, I think they do impact your legacy. Habib is not a bad person to at least have in the conversation. I mean, Habib Nurmagomedov, can't argue with 29-0, man. And you can't argue with his dominance in the UFC. I just don't feel like he was fighting, championship caliber opponents until very late in his career, just the last couple. I think, if Habib were to stick around and, rattle off 4, 5, 6 more wins over, top level lightweight competition, get defenses of the belt, I think you could definitely, talk about him being there as well. But, I think all those names belong in the conversation. You can't go wrong with any of those names, man. They're all good. And hey, throw a little Fedor Emelianenko in there as well, man. I know he kind of hurt his legacy at the end as well, but come on, man, that run that he had to start his career was incredible as well.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, me and Kevin go back and forth on this all the time, and he puts Stipe in his top 3. What do you think about that?
He's crazy. Nah, I'm just kidding.
I mean, what if he defends his belt? Say he defends against Francis, and then he fights Jones, and after beating DC twice as well.
You got to have him in the conversation. And I think at that point, yeah, it is worth having. I just, and I don't mean to say, it's right now he's got the, the record for most title defenses of the UFC title, but it's like kind of a bogus record. You know what I mean? Like it's a couple defenses, you know what I mean? So, but I agree. Yeah. No, man, if he were able to, beat Ngannou and beat Jones and listen, it's worth having him in the conversation, I guess. It's I want to see longer time. To me, that when you're talking about greatest of all time, man, you need a lengthy reign of dominance. That's what it's about to me. That's why Jones stands out to me. You know what I mean? You just, whether you like the guy or not, whether now, of course, you can always put the argument up. I see a lot of people make the argument, well, we've had the drug test. So because of the drug test, he should be immediately disqualified. That's the interesting. That's the thing about the GOAT talk, right? I mean, there really is no right answer, but I just think if for Stipe, if he was going to be in my conversation, I need to see a little bit more, length of dominance than what he's done right now.
And also what I always say to Ryan, I think Israel Adesanya has the potential. I think he's the baby GOAT right now. I think in a couple of years, he will be the greatest of all time. I think he'll be undefeated. I think he's going to defend that division, move up to 205, beat Jones. I think he's going to be like the unanimous GOAT all around.
Dude, think about this. I mean, and this is, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and it sounds crazy to even mention it, but since Israel's mentioning it, let's mention it. So he's talking about moving up to 205, fighting Jan Blachowicz next. Now, if he wins the 205-pound title, that would be amazing, right? 2 titles. But let's be honest. No disrespect to Jan Blachowicz, but I think we would all look at that as like, all right, okay, you're a 2-division champion, okay. But if he does that, and he does convince John Jones to come back to 205, and he beats John Jones, and then let's say, because he's mentioning it, as crazy as it sounds, he's mentioning moving up to heavyweight. Can you imagine if he beat Jan, beat John Jones, and then beat Stipe as well to claim the heavyweight belt? Dude, at that point, it's not even a conversation anymore. At that point, we say, hey, man, the greatest of all time talk, there is no right answer. No, at that point, there is a right answer, and it better be Israel Adesanya. So, I mean, the ability to do that, I mean, look, the odds of that happening, I don't know, man. But if it did, holy Christ, man, that would be just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Last thing here, like, what would you think about this though? Khabib's 30th fight goes for 30-0, and then GSP comes back. You think that fight could determine possibly who the GOAT is?
Well, see, that's why I love that fight so much. And what I really love about that fight is, to be honest, I wanted to see it at 155. Because I wanted GSP to have the ability to be the first 3-division champion, right? So now there's history on both sides of it. Khabib going to 30-0 and beating George St. Pierre. I mean, that would be like kind of the meeting of the GOATs, right? That would be like passing the baton over. So I do think that would be a hell of a feather in his cap. If it happens somewhere in the middle, I know they talked about a catch weight. I guess that's probably more fair for both guys. It happening at 170 would be cool for Khabib, because now you're talking about, Khabib going up a weight class, but there wouldn't be a belt on the line. So it wouldn't be like he'd be going for 2-division champion, but it would be cool to beat, the all-time great welterweight in the welterweight class. So yeah, listen, I love the idea of a GSP fight, man. I really do. For Khabib at 30, to go for 30-0 against GSP, I would love to see that happen. I would really like to see it at 155, if I'm being honest. It'd give Khabib another title defense. It would give George a shot at UFC history as well. But I don't know if that can happen or not. I mean, George does look lean, man. You look at him and obviously he's always training. Good. And he looks good. Yeah, man, he's looking lean. So I think he can make 155. I mean, Faraz Sahabi always said he'd be comfortable thinking that George could make 155. I mean, maybe he doesn't want to, though. You hear the interviews and he's like, I don't know if I want to put myself through all that. So it would be, that to me is really the most interesting fight for Khabib for 30-0. I mean, I like the idea of Tony Ferguson even coming off a loss, just because it's the fight we never got. The Conor rematch, if I'm being honest, like from a stylistic and a fight point of view, it doesn't really interest me that much. Like, I feel like I know how that fight goes. Now, in terms of just being, a global, event, yeah, it'd be cool, man. It'd get a ton of coverage, and the media stuff would be off the charts. Our web traffic would be amazing, but it doesn't really intrigue me as much. Habib and GSP is the fight that intrigues me absolutely the most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same here. It's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out. Well, but that's it from us, man. Thank you for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. It was great speaking with you, and keep up with the good work at MMA Junkie. We love your work, and yeah, that's it from us, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it, fellas, and give them a call anytime, man.
Yeah, anytime,
All
man.
right.
Keep it up. Thank you.
See you guys.